No, I'm just saying if we were doing the
I'm going to suck less today by leaving this room because I just can't stand listening to John Kitover lather on. It's so common.
Thank you, Hero. Thank you. That's when I really love my experience here is when people say you don't know John Kitover or I hate John Kitover. That's when I love my experience here. Thank you.
I know. You suck.
Well, I just want to answer Romero's question. Hello? Thank you very little. I'll put it in the complaint file. Let me go to the other office and get the complaint file real quick so I put this note and timestamp on. Romero, I'm just saying.
You're not as serious.
Oh, okay. My mere existence is a stain on reality for you. I apologize, but I'm trying to respect you and not suck today. Oh, I'm okay. Never mind. I won't answer your question. Just your question, I can't answer it. Apparently, you want me to answer it? Yes or no? Hello? Hello? I'm just saying, from a job interview perspective, if I were to interview Kamala or Donald to come in to run a company, I would choose Donald 9 out of 10 times.
You see how he's not answering my question? He's pivoted.
No, that's how I'm answering your question from a job interview perspective. You just don't like my response. You don't like what I'm saying. And John...
I literally stopped talking. I literally stopped talking so you had all the real estate to talk. But what are you doing? Pivoting.
It's not a pivot. And John, I want to bring up, you claim there's going to be a bloody civil war, John. That's your own sick imagination. I hate to break the bad news to you. We've already fought a civil war. There won't be some blood spilling that you think that you got to arm up for to fight these maggots. Hello?
Shut the fuck up for a moment and let me. I haven't spoken yet. Okay? Before you start mouthing off, start being an asshole.
John,
Just
really
let
quick.
me say a few things.
Really quick, John, before you say anything. You know what he's doing, right? He's streaming this on YouTube.
You got him again! I get him again! We keep getting them! We keep getting them!
Worthwhile product.
Woo!
We know and understand how that works. And the whole point is the only people that actually listen to these streams are us when we go in to, see.
Find out if I'm on his live stream!
Explain. But let's not go there. My only point was just to...
Sorry for existing, everybody. I do want to be better today, so I just want to say sorry for existing.
I'm gone.
So now you're going to end up with the room that you want.
Listen, gentlemen, I would just point out that I don't use profanity, first of all, and John uses a lot of profanity. I don't use profanity, and I just got to say, I talked to my dad once, and he said, John, you're using an awful lot of profanity. I said, oh, you're right. I got to be more aware of that. And I don't think John is very aware of that. And if you're trying to make your case, using profanity and talking about blood spilling and warfare against your fellow Americans, I don't do that. That's a John problem, not a John Kitover problem. Hello? That's a John Malencrop problem.
There's John. Oh, John keeps jumping in for a half second. He's like, wait, let me just see if the coast is clear. Maybe just scrolling all the better options that don't suck as much. That would be understandable.
Until people come here and
man.
What?
You lost your audience.
I jump from room to room. I'm trying to read a book here. I can't get anybody to read a book anymore. I was saying that I think I'm the last man alive who actually can read a book. And I can prove it to you. I go all around. Nobody's reading nothing. Everybody's just talking like birds in a tree. I haven't heard anybody say anything new in years. Hello? I did buy some DVDs on mathematics, professors' lectures, and it's a syllabus, and they go through all, I haven't actually popped it in the TV yet to watch it, but I'm really interested in watching hours and hours of lectures on mathematics on these DVDs that are professionally organized and put together. I mean, I know I could go on YouTube and watch that stuff, but I'm curious to see how they put mathematics on a DVD for movie viewer, consumption.
I heard the last 25 seconds of that. I popped out of the app for a second. I probably appear to be in the room when I do it. Whatever my phone's issue is, I can't hear after 5 or 10 seconds. I missed the beginning. What is the DVD math thing? Or did you say what it was called? Or
I got it in another room. Let me just go grab it.
That's not the way it is in a capitalist system, right?
That's the way it was for hundreds of years.
You know, and it's like, so what does that mean? Like, what is that?
No doubt.
What industries,
I mean,
what activities
how does that connect to
are being done to increase and maximize
It would be
profit?
the maxim. It would be the limit. It would be the end goal that you'd want to do if you wanted to take it to the threshold. And if capitalism's end goal is maximizing profit, it doesn't need to be slavery per se, but slavery is what we used, right? And then the next best thing would be indentured servitude, immigrants paid below the fray, right? All these things follow. Robots that can replace humans, whatever you want to call the magic word. Is slavery just a hot button word for you, or does the concept
No,
make
because
sense?
I think they're opposite. I think capitalism is the opposite of slavery. So I'm not sure how, you or I think Romero is the one who made the claim when I
Yeah, you did.
came in
But
here.
I certainly follow the argument. I mean, the slavery is not the opposite of capitalism. Slavery is just something that you do to people. But capitalism is a system that has a lot of moving parts. Ideally, it doesn't have slaves in it, right? But just I think he's trying to illustrate the point that if your goal is the stated goal of like every company in the United States to maximize shareholder wealth, it certainly would be a benefit to you to pay your employees as little as possible, right? To have the average employee making as little as possible. It seems to be what happens in a lot of oligopolies and so forth. You have the CEOs making ridiculous amounts of pay, though. Then you have the average worker making 300 times the difference and so forth. I just think that minimizing your employee pay, I don't agree that it makes the most sense, but seems to be the goal of a lot of companies. At least they act that way.
There was
see that ratio getting
a private equity firm just recently sold a firm that manufactures garage doors, and they rewarded every employee with a check for like $125K. They didn't have to do that. They did that out of their own goodwill and the benefits that they got from that transaction. And a lot of it deals with the leader of the organization. Like, how much does that leader really need? And how proprietary is the product or service that they're offering? There's so much that goes into this conversation. And the last thing I'll say is about the philosophy of the now, which is that it is a compression of the past and the future, not just the past. That's maybe proprietary and ridiculous, but my point is it's 2026. And when people bring up genocide, apartheid, colonial settler domination of the indigenous, the enslaved, Jim Crow, etc., to me, that's history hypnosis. And they're really bringing us up to the now. But in the now, if you believe that's all there is and all there ever will be, none of that is happening right now. And to me, philosophically, that negates their history hypnosis. And therefore, we should focus on priorities instead of the history. I just don't see why people are so obsessive compulsive about the history hypnosis to justify, an anti-capitalist or anti-optimization situation. Because profit maximization is optimization. I've worked in digital marketing all these years. What do you think all these optimizers are doing? They're trying to optimize their ROI. So what is the problem with that?
Offshoring their manufacturing to the countries of the lowest capital costs, right? Which usually is the metaphorical equivalent of slave labor, right?
Ask you this, so Pro, in the history of the human race, we've gone through various types of economy. We started out, and correct me if I'm wrong or you want to dispute this, but we started out hunter-gatherer. We moved to agrarian. We then moved to feudalism. We then moved to mercantilism. And then we moved to market-based economies. Would you agree with that? Pro, would you agree with that, the evolution of...
Well, I'm getting ready to walk my dog here, but I'm listening if I don't answer right away.
Okay, so what I'm asking is, I think what happens is we get in the weeds about the minutia, about this CEO or that company or, this pay scale or something like that. But I think what Romero, at least, I'm not sure of your thoughts on this, but just that comment that slavery or capitalism is built on slavery
Is your ability
just demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of market-based economies. So, I'll ask, what
he was like
where
someone who
do
had a
you
lot
think,
of
or what do you think was the catalyst?
reputation inside conservative circles was really high. People took him really serious, like politicians and stuff. So like they were really as much as Nick Fuentes wants to think that everyone's targeting him, no one's really concerned about Nick Fuentes because it's just a Hispanic guy in Chicago who's doesn't really like to go out, doesn't really like to get public people going. Like Charlie Kirk would go to all these farm campuses, get thousands of kids out, talking. And I think that they realized that if he could have created a movement, and even and I know that he said he was never going to run for president, but he one time said if he ever felt like he needed to, he would. And it's like, well, seems like. I think that they really were like, we're going to groom this kid to be on ours, to be a Zionist. And then when he became not a Zionist, they're like, well, we got to get rid of this guy because he has way too much influence. So that's what I think about Charlie Kirk. I think that he was psyoped and he was honeypotted and I don't think he, that he was a Zionist because he, was honeypotted by his wife, who was a CIA, Mossad, weird woman who, but I think that because of, he probably met her and was like, hey, I believe in a traditional woman. I want you to be with our kids. I don't want you to be working. And she took that. She took that serious, and she was like, okay, I'm gonna do whatever you say. Because she was required to do so, and look at it. Look at the second that he dies, what she changes her whole persona. Her persona becomes a boss lady. Doesn't become.
That's right.
So it's almost like she's playing an act.
Just giving the OnlyFans ideology.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's right. Leather jeans and shit, fucking a very. As in a single woman hugging a man that really wants the man, full body lockdown as in fucking stand-up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with J.D. Vance.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's being embraced as if she saved the nation or she's a freaking second coming of Michael Jackson or something. It's with all the fucking fireworks, what the fuck? It's almost like a humiliation ritual.
You couldn't take the OnlyFans out of her. What can I say?
That's right.
So I think all these things and I said this guy earlier, Rabbi Loving Coco. I said that I think that aliens, Iran, COVID 2.0, all of these things, they are. Now, Iran, I don't think is a full distraction. I think actually Iran takes place because of Epstein. Like, I think that the reason why the United States is involved with Iran is because, you know, Epstein is a blackmail technique that's used against our politicians to continue to do Israel's bidding. But I think that aliens, COVID, all this stuff is a distraction because these are pedophiles who ate babies, and they want us to forget that they're pedophiles who, in a just world, a world that is a God-fearing world, these people would have been killed, would have been hung in the street for their crimes against humanity. We did worse to the Nazis during the Nuremberg trials, and they never ate babies. They never ate them. Like, you got to think about this. We treated the women who were married to SS soldiers, to SS officers, worse. We shaved their heads. We stripped them naked in the street of Berlin. We allowed soldiers from the Russian and the Allied forces to rape them. We killed the millions of them through starvation post-World War II. We've treated people who were just married to individuals that we believe committed horrendous crimes worse than we've even treated individuals who've committed the crimes themselves. We treated the loved ones of those individuals worse than we're treating the ones that commit. Like, I truly think these are all signs for us to forget that these people ate babies. They kidnapped your babies, had sex with your babies, and then ate them.
You know that this Mexican model that once came out of a room screaming about...
Yes, a hospital, yes.
Say that again?
Yeah, she was coming out of a hospital. It was right after an award show. And they sent her in the hospital because at the award, I remember this whole story, at the award show, it's some Mexican TV award show, it's a TV actress and singer. And she went to the hospital because they said she had a mental breakdown at the award show, yelling about babies and stuff. And then she comes out of the hospital.
Gabriela Rico Jimenez.
And yes.
Rico.
Yes, Rico. And she comes out of the hospital, guys, and she's yelling. She's like, they're eating babies. I went to a party. They ate a real person. They ate him in front of me. I don't know what to do about it. She's freaking out. And you watch as nurses take her back into the hospital to never be seen again.
You don't know about this, Rico?
You didn't know about this, Rico?
No, I've seen
Hello?
a joke about Rico. I've seen the video. That's right.
But did they kill her? Is she alive?
We don't know. We don't know.
Fucking sad, man.
Let me share the link for y'all, then you can be like, what the fuck is he talking
No,
about?
I've seen that myself. I just never followed up if she was alive or not. I didn't think about it.
No, she's not.
So if you're a skilled engineer, then that took you some amount of time to become educated, to practice your craft, to do enough repetitions.
She's not.
Oh, 100% not. Like, this is not like,
Keegan,
Can you take out Kitover?
Keegan, I love how at the end of that you said, never to be seen again. Very dramatic ending there, Keegan. Wonderful.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I saw that video, and how do you know that she's not just like mentally ill and schizophrenic and crazy? And
when you say mentally ill, you're like referring to yourself, like that level, or like is it below, above?
I don't know. You tell me, how does projection work, Ludwig?
How does projection work?
Yeah.
Okay. If you guys know, he's in on as well on the which is fine that he's here to record. But
You say you wanted to direct?
you notice that he will come on stage and he'll just disrupt. He won't engage with the topic. He's here to disrupt.
We know that.
It is a very interesting.
It's more fun when you entertain it. When he thinks, I got you. When
Yeah.
we actually-
I believe that, like, if I ever was convinced that there was paid agents to be on this app, John Kitover is a paid agent to be on this app. If there were any.
my
No,
friends
he's
were
missing.
talking about that. We said the same thing for him as well. There's another one I'm not gonna mention because he's recording, but there's one other person, and I'm around a lot, and I think he's an A.
He has one chromosome and 2 brain cells. What do you expect? Some sort of.
Maybe he has an extra chromosome. Wouldn't that make him Down? Isn't Down syndrome an extra chromosome?
I'm not sure.
Which, what's another thing is really interesting is we used to, abortion used to be very, it used to not be legal. Used to, even if it was legal, it wasn't widespread. We never saw a lot of Down syndrome children. We're seeing an uptick. Down syndrome, like children being born. We're seeing an uptick on Down syndrome children being born in the United States. And again, if anyone wants to know, you can find out if your child will have Down syndrome at around I think it's like 14 weeks or 12 weeks maybe. I forget what week where they do a Down syndrome test and they find out whether or not your baby will have an extra chromosome or I think it's
equilibrium for the average worker. The CEO has more talents, has done a lot more things that are worth more money, and has to show different sort of proficiencies than someone down below, and they both make a market salary. The market salary for CEOs happens to be a lot higher than the market salary for somebody sweeping the floors in a McDonald's. It just is what it is. There's a law of supply and there's a law of demand. There isn't a law of supply and demand, as everyone gets it wrong. Those two will come together and it will say, well, okay, if there's not enough CEOs, well then the salary for CEOs will go up until there's enough CEOs. And then if you're a company and you're not paying your CEO a market wage, well, he's just going to jump ship to some other company. So I would say that the same rule applies. Capitalism works at the top as it will work at the bottom. The fact that they make 35x or 80x or whatever the difference is just the difference in what the market is rewarding for the top versus what the market is rewarding at the bottom.
I would add to that, the reason the disparity has grown exponentially in the past, 10, 20 years is because of globalism. In the past, most companies were local or maybe at most national. But now with logistics, supply chains, the internet, the global reach and global access to overseas markets has just exploded. So now a company that used to be just dealing with, local customers within an hour's drive or so, can now reach millions, hundreds of millions of customers around the world. So the global reach has increased. The global revenue reach has increased the competition. So the number of CEOs who are capable of operating at a strategic global level is extremely scarce and extremely rare. So if I'm a company, if I'm on a board and I want to find, an Elon Musk or a Jeff Bezos or some rarefied person capable of operating at that level and creating a profit on a global level, then I'm going to pay that person top dollar because the alternative is my competitor gives me. And now, we are outperformed and we may go under.
You're the best example of what you're talking about. In New York City a few weeks ago, the city council a while ago put into place that restaurant service workers would have to make X dollars, and X was greater than the prevailing wage rate. The thinking was, a similar thing happened in California, where restaurants are closing. Like, that's just not enough. So I can't remember what X was. I think it was $20 versus say $15 or $16. Well, guess what some restaurants are doing now? They had a screen where you walk up and you place your order. A person in the Philippines is taking your order, pushing a couple keystrokes, it's going to a back office system in the other side of the restaurant. They just now eliminated that position of the person taking the order. Why? Because they artificially increased the cost, above which companies have said, we can't afford to do that. There's a cheaper solution. So when you artificially increase the cost of labor through government intervention, things like this happen, and you end up messing with the law of supply and the law of demand. And they're very sweet when they're left along their own. They fall apart when you put these artificial constraints on it. So now you can go order your
production, and it's been fun. I am getting my production bag together. That's what you guys are. I'm just getting my bag together to go out the house. Sorry, running up and downstairs, running late to get my son. But yeah, these are it's gonna be a fun talk. I just think whenever you're reducing all these complex social political phenomena into like this one market force idea, like you got it all covered and just call it globalization, it feels like a little too clean to me. Like, you got nothing to see here, just keep it moving. That's just how it works. It's all just naturalization. You're treating the outcome like hi puppy. Hi. Like the weather. I just walked my dog. It's like globalization happens, the CEO pay just naturally rises up to just what we gotta do. But the pay systems that we have, they're designed by people, boards, laws, taxes, the incentives, the stupid things that we vote for all the time without thinking, right? Stock markets, whatever the power structures are. I mean, you're right about some of the stuff. I'm not saying you're not right about some of the stuff. I mean, globalization clearly is part of this equation. I'm not naive enough to think that isn't it. But
Pro, I'd like to respond to what you're saying.
Hold on. I got to run real quickly. You guys can have almost all the time. This pay disparity I'm talking about, by the way, it's not 35 times. Sometimes it's 100 times. It's not because CEOs became like freaking more useful. It jacked up through the roof because they're better positioned to capture more of the surplus, and that's what's always happening here because they have the economic leverage to do it. I'm sure you've read the Economic Policy Institute reports that came back out just a couple of years ago. Most people that talk at economics like this level, by the way, I was an economics undergrad before I went on to get a doctorate in mathematics. I went to graduate school, did education, that kind of shit, right? So I'm pretty decently versed in this kind of stuff too. CEOs were paid, it was almost 300 times. I forget the nickel and dime answers in the high 200s, but pretty damn much 300 times as much as typical workers. And CEO compensation goes way faster. It's like exponential, bro. Like it's not literally, but pretty damn close. And I think if you're going to be fair about the stuff and you want to ask a fair question, it's something along the lines of, did the globalization stuff we're talking about make the CEOs a little bit more important? And I think the answer is yeah, right? Did it make them 290 times more the worker important? That's pretty much of a leap, bro. That's where this stuff starts to, the math isn't mathing. You can pretend the math's mathing. You can pretend the math's mathing, but the math isn't mathing in that way. And you don't just go, oh, well. If you just go, oh, well, then the system is the problem. The system is the problem. You just go, oh, well. Well, the attitude is kind of like, it's just how it is. There's nothing.
No, I'm just saying there are some simple market forces at play that,
Did workers become global, though? Did those?
In a way, yes. They have to compete globally. Yeah, they have, unfortunately. I lost my job at one point to global outsourcing. Yeah, it did.
I was going to say a lot of this can be blamed on McKinsey. They're the consulting firm. McKinsey deliberately worked, I forget how many years ago, 20, 25 years ago, in their consulting interactions or dealings, targeted CEO pay as the way for companies to stand out. So if everybody has access to the same technology, if everybody has access to the same logistics, everybody has access to the same financial structure, and all things being equal, the key pivotal piece is the CEO, the Steve Jobs, the Jeff Bezos, the people who stand out and above the others. So, I was just saying, a lot of this can be targeted on McKinsey. There was a consulting group, or is a consulting group, McKinsey, that about 20, 25 years ago started consulting with these larger companies saying that, hey, if everybody operates under the same financial system, everybody operates under the same legal system and the logistics system and the technology system, right? Then the key pivot point or the key point of leverage is the CEO. That's the visionary pivot point that's going to elevate one company and accelerate their rise above the others. So if that's the case, then you should pay him or her, a price that keeps them with your company and, leverages that.
I work for a competitor of theirs, actually an outgrowth of the T. Carney, which spun off from McKinsey in 1936.
Is that accurate, what I said? Is that consistent with your...
Yeah, it was a focus. It was the entire focus of what they were doing when they were speaking to boards, and there were a lot of other initiatives. I wouldn't say that was the majority, and I think it would take a detailed analysis to say, was this one initiative the reason why there was a huge growth, as Pro was saying, in CEO salary? A, I don't think we have the data, and B, the complexity of it is just far too great to ascribe it to one variable. Yeah, they did do that kind of consulting, but at the end of the day, boards will do what's in the best interest of their company, and if they feel that they are overpaying, you will see downward pressure on that. Boards answer to shareholders, and if these CEOs are compressing profits, well, that's a problem. And just the ebbs and flow of how these things work together are very intricate, and it's I don't think enough to say, well, it's because of X.
Pro, can I just say, I put in the chat, to me, your awareness about the situation is the law, meaning that, your understanding of math and economics, what I'm trying to say is that the law actually gives us this equilibrium, and it's fucked up that money is what controls the politics and thus the business and the boardroom, everything. It's like money has this intelligence or weight, and the complaint could be that billionaire is unethical, immoral, unsavorable, obnoxious and horrible. And as you just heard, from my critics on this app, my mere existence is detestable to people, and it's really just because I record, probably. Maybe they don't have anything against me personally. They probably think I'm reprehensible because of my opinions. But when I hear people essentially doing hypnosis about past grievances that I have never been a part of, and neither have you nor the person telling me about the grievance, to me, it's like, I think maybe I'm more aware of like how to be happier or joyful or move on the face of the earth, and it's still just my opinion. Hello? We have CM and Sam. Welcome back. CM got upset with me yesterday. He had an emotional hissy fit, kind of like what I would describe like having a child, in your presence who has a temper tantrum. He's screaming, kick this MFer from the room, kick this mother effer. And, Sam left. I'm sure nobody wants to hear me. See, people want to be the star of their own show. Sam is that star. And, there are people who organize, and I would call them leaders. Even if I don't agree with other opinions, if you organize a room and create a title and have a house, well, that's like being a gym class leader. Or, anyways, I don't know if Pro can hear me, but I got those DVDs. I just put them down by my DVD player, and really incredible DVDs like Fundamentals of Mathematics, and then it has all these lectures by professors. One of them was from University of Texas, and he's talking about basically applied mathematics and all these different situations where they used math to, probably determine the greatest outcome. And so that's my complaint about these maximalization profit ethicists who claim that that's the problem. Well, in a free society, when people try to optimize the situation, if they can legally and morally and ethically do it, guess what human behavior generally does? They do it. And, the craziest thing to me and the saddest thing to me is if you go to a casino, I consider it like a temple. People go there to basically have some type of faith experience. They don't understand the law of large math or basically basic statistics. And I cannot understand people's experience at a casino. I know they want the dopamine, but I don't know if you know Abby, the lawyer around here. I tell her, I'm like, you must hate Clubhouse because people have the casino dopamine experience, but they don't have to pay for it. And to me, that's, a fun experience and a fun revelation that the casino really is for suckers. I personally think the stock market in many ways is basically a casino for suckers because I have done lots of experiments in the market. And if you get into day trading, it rapidly becomes like a dopamine experience, and you think you can outsmart the dopamine experience by day trading. But the problem is your whole life just becomes reading financial news and news gossip, financial gossip and press. It's like it's its own thing. It's its own marketplace. But when it comes to the title of this room, working on how not to suck, join me in this pursuit. To me, no one's ever really sucked. There's just been like disagreeable people that you find annoying. But then basically, I think if you love yourself and you want the best for yourself, ultimately you treat everybody, even the disagreeable, horrible people, with respect because anytime you give disrespect, it just comes back to you. So people try to fuck with you, but if you have a good disposition, character, personality, you can, overcome any objections in a way because it basically comes down to, are you making sense? Is it logical? Are you persuasive and informative? And it's, basic public speaking. But when people crash out on me, they don't understand. I've told this to Pro that I think I'm playing like the role of the fool in a king's court, and the fool goes around and trolls all the noblemen, all the noble ladies, all the inferior people in this type of caste kingdom system. And to me, people accuse me of being performative, but this is actually me. Everything I think and say is who I am, and that's what worries me about other people is that what they're saying is in a way like who they are, and they're not really saying anything. They're complaining, and not only are they complaining, they're repeating leftist woke hypnosis history in order to essentially virtue signal and justify their position. But the thing is, if there's no applied action to what they're doing on this app, I think it's a big waste of time. And I do apply what I'm doing by actually running in politics and putting my face out there publicly because, being a private person helps you with employment. But if I have to go and have a hiring manager, look me up on the internet, there's like an 80 to 99% chance that they'll say no just based on the content. But they'll never actually listen to the content or actually try to like experience because a lot of these recordings that I do are 2 to 3 to 4 to 20. There's so much content. So it's like, how could you value judge me with a sample? And I think that's one of the problems with this app is the samples are of such low quality and such small content of, terabytes, gigabytes, megabytes. It's a very slow information transfer thing. So the big takeaway from Clubhouse is the emotional response experience. That's really what Stoic philosophy and Taoism and all these therapeutic healing types of philosophical, religious, esoteric studies are dealing with is the emotional state. And I think the Bible is actually a book mostly about emotional intelligence, not intellectual intelligence, but emotional intelligence. I rest my case. I'm working on how not to suck. Join me in this pursuit.
on a second, guys.
That was comprehensive, John. What's up, CM?
So what's up?
And I'm trying to pick up my son. Actually, I gotta go see my son's music recital, and then I gotta take him to basketball. That so it's like being a parent, bro. There's steps.
You know, I was a high school photographer. I have no kids, but I like to make films. I mean, I would love to have kids and film, their joy and publish that. But like part of me is like that could take away from that person's experience, but maybe not. I mean, how do you feel about children essentially documenting their lives at a young age with the belief that they're going to do it their whole life or something?
He doesn't like it. But I've saved all this stuff for him, and he has it in a file, so he does like reviewing the stuff. But we don't like publicly put him out there like that. Every once in a great while there'll be a little something, but for the most part, he's pretty much off the grid. For the most part, as much as you can be in 7th grade.
Yeah, I worked at Google YouTube, and our client was SC Johnson, who makes Ziploc. I was an account manager, and they were very concerned about their ad placement on controversial, potentially right-wing or controversial content that appears on YouTube. So they wanted a full audit of where all their advertisements were being displayed. And I'm going through all these YouTube accounts that I have never seen or heard of, but they're huge accounts, like 10 million, 60 million, followers, and they're making huge amounts of money filming their life as a family in a mansion and going out and doing things. And they create all these videos, and it's some of it is risque even, where the mom is walking in the living room on her knees and her big fat ass is up in the air. And the next thing you know, you see a Ziploc advertisement.
It exploded back maybe 10 years ago. Ryan's Toy World is a good example of one. I'm gonna lose you in a second, and I'll be able to hear you guys in a while, but it'll be spotty. But yeah, if you look up Ryan's World, he launched his own toy line, I think when he was 9 years old in Walmart, and his mom and dad are in all the videos, and his sisters are now doing it. They're younger than him, and he's Disney World. I know Red Bar now.
Yeah, we got Scott in the audience. Scott had a room today called Let's Talk About MAGA. I recorded the whole thing in multiple recording studios. And I want to mention something about that room. Scott, welcome. But, YouTube, I record mostly on YouTube. And to me, YouTube, Google's where the money's at, because that's where all the advertisers are. And other people say, oh, you should do Twitch and Kick, and I do TikTok, but I can't live stream on Instagram anymore. And Scott says he's a fan of mine. And Scott, I heard you say a lot of things today, I've always been a hardcore leftist, or I was an extreme hardcore leftist, but not so much anymore. I mean, Scott, how do you view bad ideas from people on this app? What are the priorities? Is it not about priorities? What's it all about? Hello?
Yes, I think on some level we have to have a sense of what the collective project is. I don't know that we've got that. I don't know that we've I like Pro a lot, I like you a lot. I mean, but I don't know that we've got a collective we anymore. And so, I go into the critical thinking forum, which I'm going to do in about 2 minutes. Because largely, I think that to me is a collective we for me. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the collective project is. I know that we're running out of money as a country. Some people think that's the problem. Some people don't. I mean,
I think it's
How do you run out of money, Scott, when you're at 40 trillion in debt? What AI says is that you lose core services when more of your tax revenue goes towards interest
right. The
payments.
GDP. Yeah. I mean, that's we're at that point, right? But I think, but no one runs on that, right? I mean, so there's largely, you know, there's two different answers to this, right? I mean, the Republican answer is just tax cuts and we'll cut spending, but they don't really cut spending. The Democratic answer is, we'll expand government services and that's going to increase tax revenue, and so we'll get, which it does. I mean, there's some truth to that. It does, but we're done. I mean, this is $40 trillion. I mean, this is not. Nobody's been in this debt in world history. John, no one. And that's what we will ask the critical.
Yeah, but Scott, it's not a question of no one. It's really a question of it's a miracle that America is still alive and not impacted from 25 years of intense warfare overseas. We have a kingdom here which has not crumbled in the slightest. We have a cultural, social problem of really attention. We can't get people's attention to read a book. I think, Scott, I'm the last man who's ever read a book for today, at least, you know? At least today I read a book for 3 minutes. That's more than 99.9999999% of the whole human.
Yeah, I was reading books every day. I went through a breakup about a month ago, and I was reading books every day.
One thing I've noticed about Clubhouse is you have
mostly
Nietzsche.
I was reading a lot of Nietzsche, but
that's difficult with the way
why
the
aren't you
technology
modded?
is set up here. It's
John,
not like
they don't mod you in here.
I don't know.
I'm not gonna mod you, but
No.
Pro, do you not mod John?
No. I'm considered a potential problem to some people. But my point is that as soon as you mod somebody, the algorithm rewards you and moves you higher up in the news feed. So if you were actually interested in audience and networking, you would just mod everybody. And then if somebody is a problem, then you just kick them to the goo, you know? And if it's a house, they can't boom it. If it's a public room, they can boom it. So, you know, people use me for content and I use them for content. And people who complain about me, I complain about them. You know, I try to live a balanced lifestyle. And I feel that, you know, my position is of great equanimity and balance and harmony and joy and strength and positivity and love and great aesthetic and intelligence. And that's why I'm actually very optimistic about the future, because I realize that the great mass of human population is completely just living in a somnambulance, just sleepwalking, completely unaware of their ignorance, their own effeminacy, you know, and weakness, and, you know, basically bad opinions, and, you know, they don't see beauty, they only see ugliness, or they can't actually create anything beautiful, or have any fun or joy or experience magnificence and great thrills. I mean, I think we're living with a very depressed population personally. If you go to see psychiatrists, many of them don't even smile. They're just very upset themselves. So, you know, what's the secret sauce for happiness? What's the magic recipe for success, abundance, strength, health, power? Hello?
Day to $4.56 a gallon, up more than $1.50 since the conflict erupted in late February. That's according to the AAA, which on a daily basis monitors the average.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I was just doing my thing, and you were getting all upset.
Diesel is extremely significant because, of course, the trucking industry runs on diesel, jumped to $5.67.
I was talking about the benefits of.
Now that's compared to $3.54 a year ago. So it's threatening to drive up the price of countless goods delivered by truck and rail.
Well, just go ahead. Tell me right now what you were thinking then. Can you do it?
The president said this week that the United States is making great progress in its negotiations with Iran.
What did you say?
I said, can you tell me what you were thinking then, right now?
Those
Pronouncements,
tomorrow.
but economists and energy experts predict that fuel costs are likely to be elevated for months to come, no matter what happens with regard to the negotiations. Because as the oil experts have said, and I've repeated this often because it's so descriptive, in times of duress such as this, oil prices shoot up like a rocket, but they fall like a feather. Boy, I think that's very descriptive, isn't it? So, there's a great story in the LA Times which says that the gas prices are widening the wealth gap between wealthy and poor Americans. This is extremely significant. Here's what the LA Times story says. Lower-income Americans sharply reduced their gas consumption in the months following the start of the Iran war, yet spiking prices still force them to spend more at the pump, worsening the economy's economic disparity. Higher income households, meanwhile, did increase their spending on gas, but barely reduced their consumption because they can afford it. And this is according to a report from the Federal Reserve of New York. And middle-income households fell in between these two disparities. According to the Federal Reserve of New York, the gaps between how each group reacted were larger than in 2022 when a similar gas price shock occurred after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Higher-income households cut back more on their gas consumption 4 years ago than in March, while poor households likely benefited more from government stimulus programs in 2022, which we don't have this time. And by the way, according to this Federal Reserve report, wealthier households have seen significant increases in the value of their stock and real estate holdings since the start of the war. So while you and I are suffering, and those who are lower in the economic strata more so than those of us who are middle income, the wealthy people just continue to get wealthier. This doesn't affect them. They're Teflon when it comes to the war. And so the gap widens. This is extremely important. Why? Because we see what happens in nations when you don't have a strong middle class and there's a wide disparity between the very rich and the very poor and very little in between. And we, of course, if we are any bit empathetic to the plight of people who are struggling economically, we certainly don't want to see them struggle more today than they did yesterday, but even worse tomorrow. So I want to get back to the economy and the U.S. debt in a moment. Even though the problems with the U.S. debt are not solely by any related to what's going on with the gas crisis, but it just adds to the stress on the economy. And I don't want to ignore that. So I'm going to expand the conversation to that in a minute. But before I do, I want to talk about airline prices. So this is from The Guardian. 2 million airline seats have been cut from this month's schedules as airlines redraw their operations because of soaring jet fuel prices due to the Middle East conflict. About 13,000 fewer flights will operate in May around the world after recent cancellations. That's according to data from the aviation analytics company Cirium. C-I-R-I-U-M, Cirium, in case you're interested in looking it up. Now, to put it in context,
it is true that that figure, while it sounds pretty large, and I think it is pretty large, represents less than 2% of global aviation capacity. But it comes as there are fears in the industry that the long-term supply of jet fuel, according to The Guardian, could cause further summer cancellations. And there are consolidations of routes going on right now in anticipation of this. And we're just getting into, hopefully, the summer travel season. So I mentioned the depth. There's a story in the New York Times today that I could not ignore as we talk about fuel prices. And again, in fairness, obviously this is a long-term problem, but it speaks to how our policymakers have blinders on. So here's the story in today's New York Times. The top of the story reads, the U.S. government learned last week that it may have reached an unfortunate milestone. The size of its debt surpassed the nation's total economic output. It was a striking imbalance, according to early estimates, one that the country has experienced only in rare circumstances, briefly during the pandemic and in the aftermath of World War II. But, the New York Times reports, the development barely seemed to register in the nation's capital, where few policymakers bothered to acknowledge the latest warning signs about the government's poor fiscal health. The root of the problem is well documented and widely known. U.S. debt has soared in recent years because of a mismatch between federal spending and tax revenue, one complicated by a rapidly aging population, which has driven up costs across the government. By the way, this was something that the president promised to address, both in his first term and in the current term. And we are easily fooled by the politicians who point fingers one at each other's parties over this issue. Given the fact that both parties spend like drunken sailors, there is zero concerted effort that I could see on the Hill or in the executive branch to address this government spending issue, which my entire lifetime, at least since I have been old enough to be aware, has been a problem which never really gets addressed. Even with Doge, it didn't get addressed. And in fact, I think with the Doge cuts, in the aggregate, the cost of shutting down and then the cost of shutting down and restarting different programs that they surely knew would be forced by the courts to reopen, in the aggregate, from what I remember, some of the reporting, and I don't have this right in front of me, was more costly than if they'd done nothing at all. So, I don't know. I'm not an economist. I don't know whether this results in, all of this results in inflation, or a repression, or a depression, or whether we just tighten up our belts and adjust our lives and say this is our new reality, at least for the moment. I don't know. I'll tell you that I drive a conversion van, which I love, and I'm not going to give up driving my van because I camp out in my van, and it is my daily drive because I'm living alone. I don't need two vehicles, and I don't get but 17 miles to the gallon. And I don't do that much driving other than, to and from the train station, which isn't a long drive, except, of course, when I take the van out for my expeditions, but I feel, okay, I spend for this, that's fine. It's my vacation and I want to spend the money that I saved up to go and explore. And so I don't worry too much about it then. But now on a daily basis, sometimes it may be more convenient for me to drive most of the way to work rather than take the train. And it's like, well, why would I do that right now? Between the tolls and the parking and the increased gas prices, I've adjusted a little bit, and I bet you've adjusted a little bit too. So I want to hear what you all have to say about that. Folks in the audience, raise your hand. I know some people put their hands up and then took them down because I call you up one at a time now. So don't get frustrated. I will get to y'all. So today, we'll start our discussion in the order in which I see folks, which begins with Marshall, followed by Scott.
I can't talk too much about gas prices, but that's a GDP ratio means that borrowing and the federal government is harder, which means borrowing the president is harder. It also means that we're not going to be able to spend as much, that we will be forced to cut down entitlements. That's the government policy. Social Security, Medicare, and disability, SSID, along with Social Security, there's one other security tax benefit. Those are the largest growing portions of U.S. spending aside from service to the debt. And so we will be forced to make austerity cuts within my lifetime. What I really get out of all of this is, and I don't mean this in an offensive fashion, I mean in kind of a playful fashion, but truthful fashion. Your generation and the next generation screwed my generation 10 ways from Sunday by not being able to control how much we spend. And it is as somebody who's 35 and millennial, it's a little hard.
Oh, no question. Your assessment is accurate because these politicians, they want to kick the can down the road and get through their tenure without having to address these problems. It'll be the next Congress and the next Congress or the next administration and the next administration's problem. Sooner or later, the chickens come home to roost, as the saying goes. Did I get that right? I'm not so sure. But at any rate, you're absolutely right. And I don't understand.
It's just like my generation just looks at kinds of social services that your generation and generation else had access to.
The problem is everybody has their vested interest. When it comes,
sure.
Yeah, everybody has their vested interest when it comes to programs they don't want cut.
Coming.
What's that? Marshall, we're losing you again. Marshall,
I'm helping prepare for an event for the Congresswoman, so I gotta fix something.
All right. Yeah, you're breaking up. You're in and out, in and out, in and out. So, but anyway, the point is, Marshall is exactly right. Nobody wants their program cut. By the way, to that point, the board that the president appointed to oversee FEMA today recommended cutting the FEMA budget in half. In half. Now, maybe that's necessary based on our discussion today, but when they talk about cutting FEMA, a lot of people look at, well, we've been having serious weather events lately. We're going through a cycle, whatever the reason. I'm not going to get into the argument of the cause, whether it's a natural cycle or whether it's a man-made type of a situation. I don't know. That's not today's discussion. But we know that the need for emergency management assistance from the U.S. government is is greater now than ever. Just last night or this morning, both overnight, more than 500 homes were significantly damaged in Mississippi by a rash of tornadoes. I don't know, maybe we could say it's not the federal government's responsibility to address these issues when whole communities get wiped out by floods and tornadoes and hurricanes. It's your fault for not having insurance and in terms of immediate recovery efforts. Well, the church groups can come in and take care of that. We don't need FEMA. Some people might argue that, but I suspect that a lot of people hear this news with a degree of disdain. So where do we make the cuts in order to address the debt situation? But the more immediate problem, of course, is the cost of fuel and how it drives up costs and how we have to adjust our lives, our consumption. By the way, I saw a story also the other day. Again, I don't have this one in front of me, but I'm just recalling it now as I speak about restaurants having to lay off staff and restaurants that are actually closing. They can't afford to operate in the manner in which they operated before because people aren't going to the restaurants in the manner they did before this war because they don't have the discretionary income for a night out. Give mom the day off, she doesn't have to cook. Or date night, even. I don't know. But that's what the story said. And I gotta believe that it's accurate because it just makes sense that it would be. Thank you, Marshall. We'll go to Scott, followed by Steve. Good time to put your hand up, folks. Scott.
Yeah, I think it's not. I'm with Marshall on this to some point. I think so. Part of it is the fuel prices, right? Part of it is the cost of entitlements. Part of it is the inflation. I think the tipping point is there's just too many pressure points, right? I think that largely most people are feeling squeezed. And, you know, if you're like me, I live in Philadelphia, I don't drive. I mean, I just take public transportation most places. But most people, even if you don't have a car, you just feel the squeeze. You go into a convenience store and you see what a burrito costs or what Doritos cost. And yeah, you're being squeezed. And I think that's the problem is the squeeze. It's feeling the pinchers from all directions. And so I think that's the problem, Gary. And I don't know how we get out of it. I mean, I don't know. I think fuel costs are an issue. The debt is an issue. I mean, I think one of the things that Biden did, which I think wasn't necessarily the worst move in the world, but Biden was looking down the nose at a recession, and he didn't want it on his watch. And so he pumped $1 trillion into the economy, which, you know, maybe it was the healthier move. I don't know, but what does that do? I mean, you put a lot more money in the economy chasing the same amount of goods. It raises prices. So, I mean, I think people are feeling squeezed. And I don't know how you get out of the feeling of the squeeze, but I mean, I think that's the issue. And I don't know that collectively we have the kind of collective sensibility to get out of the situation. I think mostly the politicians we're hiring or electing are largely that's their job. They want to get elected and reelected. And so I don't know. I think we're in big trouble.
Well, you know, you say to taking public transportation costs are rising too. I just noted that the PATH train, which links New Jersey with New York City, the Port Authority the past trend, it's going up in price. Everything's going up in price. And obviously, if the gasoline and diesel prices are rising, the cost of goods are going up. I did my grocery shopping this morning on the way home from work, and there were things that I had intended to purchase. And I looked at the cost and I said, you gotta be kidding me. And there were things that I was gonna put in my basket that I decided not to, just on the principle of, I'm not gonna spend that much money for that item. And here's another thing that I noticed today, and it's not like they're bare shelves or anything like that, but I wanted to buy a certain product, and none could be found in the store. So I don't know. And also, here's something I noticed this time and the last time. I buy bottled water. I buy spring water because I like using spring water in my cooking and my preparing my beverages and so forth. I don't like the type of water that happens to come out of the tap here where I live. It's a little too harsh. So, I'll buy a gallon of water. Usually, it used to be for 80 or 90 cents a gallon. It's now $1.50 a gallon. But I'll do that. Even when it comes to that, I noticed last time I go every couple of weeks and stock up. So 2 weeks ago, and then again this morning, there were like empty shelves. I mean, they weren't out of spring water, but there was a shortage of spring water. And no locks. I had the taste. I wanted, this morning after I got off the train, I wanted to come home and I wanted bagels and cream cheese and lox, which I know is very expensive now, but I was just in the mood to treat myself. No lox in the store. Sorry, guys, we don't have them in stock today. So it's starting to affect it. And when it affects my palate negatively, Scott, that's not a good thing. Puts Gary in a bad mood. You ever get that? When you put it in your mind, this is what I crave today, and you go on a search, and then you can't find it, puts you in a bad mood.
Yeah, no, look, I think that's going to be a lot of the country, right? I mean, I think, again, I don't drive because I live in the city, but I think a lot of Americans, most Americans do. And I think you're hitting the nail on the head. I think most Americans, because we're in a car culture, we're not as sort of, and even with public transit and all that stuff, but I mean, that's a more shared, distributive effect. But that's not our culture. We're a car culture. And I think most Americans are going to be angry every day pulling up to the pump and just resenting the fact that they have to pay this much every day. And so, look, it's not good. I don't know that it will be a tipping point, though, because I think, I don't know. I mean, what is the tipping point there? I mean, is it going to throw us into chaos? I don't think so. I think largely we'll stay in a sort of inflationary economic situation where prices continue to go through the roof, where we play our partisan games, right? And that's what we do. I mean, what my party is gonna definitely win the midterms, and what will we do? We'll investigate the administration. We'll have hearings, all this stuff. But nobody's going to problem solve until the thing collapses, because that's not, we don't have politicians that are problem solvers or creative. So it's just we will just do management. And so that will be, I don't think it's going to get better until it gets worse.
Thank you for that, Scott. I don't know whether there will be pitchforks and lanterns lit, torches lit because of all this. But there might be a tipping point where people just, they're not willing to take it anymore, and I don't know how they would express that. But the midterms are coming up. Thank you, Scott. We'll go to Steve, followed by Jay.
Hey, Gary, how's it going?
I'm good. I'm having a nice, you probably heard the beep, beep, beep of the microwave, so I'm making up for my lack of locks with a nice salmon dinner while I host our gathering today.
That sounds good, but I'm not a salmon lover. But to the point, I think the two things you're describing, Gary, one is event-driven, the oil price. The second is a structural issue, which the event-driven can bleed into the structural temporarily, but it's not the long-term issue here. And I think it was the early 80s when we started offshoring all our manufacturing, and we went to a service-based economy. And your town actually is a perfect example of what could have contributed to this. The workforce that's in Detroit right now versus, say, the late 60s, early 70s, and the kind of money that those people that worked in the factories in Detroit making automobiles is going to be extracting from Social Security and from Medicare and Medicaid is going to be disproportionate in a ratio kind of way to the type of money that's being put back in by the residents now, because the type of jobs they have is not going to generate the same income that a factory worker in the late 60s or early 70s was generating to the federal government. And here's something else too that just amazes me. When this whole thing first started, me and my wife was having a conversation, and I told her, and this is really true, you cannot become wealthy as a country without making something. You have to have a manufacturing base to produce wealth. Look at what happened in China when they captured all of our manufacturing and the rise of their economy. We've been going in this direction for a long time, and Marshall talking about, well, your generation has got my generation. Well, in a sense it did, but the people inside that generation didn't offshore all these manufacturing jobs over to China. And this is what is disconcerting to me, is when Trump talks about trying to reinvigorate the manufacturing base inside the United States through different pressure mechanisms, where people can start finding a better job than, say, working at Walmart and having to get food stamps to live. How much do you think that's going to supply a structural issue in the deficit? Not much, because they're not going to be putting in as much, and they're going to be extracting resources to feed themselves. So this is a structural issue that's been going on for a long, long time. And what we've done, we've been living off of a credit card, and payday's coming. And here's what's just totally blows my mind. Within the federal government, there has to be a lot of waste and fraud. And when we had this Doge thing, maybe these guys didn't do it correctly. But the idea, and this isn't, you look at the highlighted issues like what we see in Minneapolis. That's just a symptom of a much broader problem. You can probably go into the Defense Department and the budget they have and the contractors they have. Everyone's heard about the $300 hammer. Well, when you get in these kind of shapes, you got to go through these systems. You got to root out the waste and abuse to where you really find out what the true structural problem is. How big is it? Well, you're not going to know until you get that thing lean and mean. So I think what we're talking about today, as soon as the Strait of Hormuz is opened up and ships starts flowing again, and we see equilibrium in the oil supply, and the futures traders aren't so paranoid about what's going to happen tomorrow in the Middle East, you'll see this oil price thing bounce back real quick. The other issue, though, the structural issue with the debt, is going to take some serious politicians, and it's going to take a willingness to tell the people the truth. If you don't have manufacturing in the United States, and you think that people working at these service jobs is going to produce the type of income to the federal government that it takes to fund this stuff, you're living in a delusional fantasy. So I don't know how this isn't obvious to everyone. I don't know. What do you think about it?
I'll talk. You covered things. Here's what I think about us knowing about the problem with regard to government spending, because I don't know that the price of oil is going to fall very quickly, as you suggest. I hope you're right, and that the analysts that I quoted earlier are wrong. And I'm putting my money on you because that's what I want. I want it to fall quickly. But you talked about the government waste and how we've known about this all along. And I'm old enough to remember, and I don't know whether you are, William Proxmire. He was a Democratic senator from Wisconsin. And every month he issued his Golden Fleece Award. He did this 1975 to 1988. Right. So he did it for a long time. Every month he brought examples of, you mentioned the expensive hammers, that kind of thing. Right. Ridiculous or ironic, wasteful government spending. Yeah. And he targeted projects he considered wasteful. And, for example, here was one that he did. The National Science Foundation. Your tax dollars were used, and I'm not saying we shouldn't have a National Science Foundation. Right. But your tax dollars were used, Proxmire told us, to fund a study on why people fall in love. That was the first Golden Fleece that he... Yeah. You know? Right. Why do people fall in love? There's a song that will answer your question for you a lot cheaper. Anyway, right. The point is, we know about these wasteful spendings, and we laugh about them, or we claim that we're going to do something about it, but nobody does anything. I think the president tried with Doge, but I think it was not a very smooth way of doing it, and they went crazy. They can do anything that they want, and so that was a real big miscalculation. I think in terms of form, it might have sent a message, but in terms of substance, it did not.
Yeah, the idea was correct. The execution was just wrong. But, when we talk about structural issues like this, until you really know how much fat is on something, you can't do a true analytical evaluation of the problem you're dealing with. And what kills me, and I think it goes both ways, because I think there's people that benefit from different things, like in the Defense Department. I could only imagine how much, waste is floating around there. And then in entitlements, you hear these stories of all the time of people renting these office spaces, no one's there. So I think there's got to be and Gary, I got to tell you, as someone that's dealt with some budgetary issues, this is partly our fault too, as Americans, because one of the hardest things that you'll see is when you talk to people about budgetary constraints, they look at you like, well, why can't we? Well, why can't we is because this is not monopoly money, and these same accounting principles and same business principles that run a company run a government. You got to have some financial clarity to what you're doing. And people will get involved in government projects, and it's like there's Well, I know what is, because there's no accountability to the failure. That's why these government programs get out of control, because, like, I used to run a small trucking company. If I made bad decisions, I would go out of business. If you're in government and you make bad decisions, you just tax people more. You never have to feel the pain of your decision making. And until we get something like that going, we're structurally we're in bad shape. But I think one is an event and one is structural. I'll leave it there.
So it's not as if there aren't organizations within government whose job it is to watchdog all of this. There are. There are more than 70 federal inspectors general. Although Trump, which I don't understand it, given that he wanted to cut all this wasteful spending, he got rid of a bunch of inspectors general. But across all the major federal agencies, each of them has a inspector general, and there's the Government Accountability Office, which is the primary watchdog. Each audit federal spending, they identify waste, they root out fraud, abuse, and mismanagement. Great. But as you point out correctly, they have no authority to order changes. They just report them. And apparently, in spite of the fact that this administration wanted to cut the federal spending with this Doge thing, which, as you and I both recognize, kind of backfired, at the same time they were eliminating inspectors general because, I don't know, I guess some people don't want to know that they have a serious or terminal disease. So they don't go to the doctor. Or they fire the doctor who gives them the bad news, because that's not what they want to hear. I understand that. There's a psychological reason for that. But you're exactly right. In the private sector, as you were talking, I was thinking about where I work. If my vice president and general manager, who has our division, can't keep things profitable, well, he's going to be gone. And somebody who can ensure profitability will move in, and there will be probably cuts in personnel as a result. So you can't, when you're in private industry, let it get out of hand. You're right. In the government, they can and they do, and nobody, apparently, according to that New York Times story, in Washington really gives much of a damn about it. And so you combine this with the current crisis with the gas and diesel costs. We are under severe economic stress in our households, but also we're in extreme economic distress in Washington. You combine the two, and I don't know, again, I'm not an economist, but it seems like that's a recipe for absolute economic disaster in this.
Well, I can give you one example I was personally involved with. It involved our city council, it involved our county commission, it involved some state people, and we was talking about in percentage terms of a budget, a significant amount to a budgetary issue. And the math was so simple on this, Gary. It was literally 6th grade level math that you could look at these numbers and tell they wasn't working at any level. I mean, a 6th grader could have done the math on it. And people, I mean, we had a meeting room with about 300 people in it, and no one was pointing out the obvious fact. These numbers just don't work, and I'm sitting here listening to these people ramble on, getting high on their own BS. And finally, the engineer was talking, I told him, I said, just stop right there. I said, please, just stop. And I laid out the numbers. And I looked at everyone, and I said, can anyone in this room that's so enthused on pushing this project tell me how these numbers are going to work? and they looked like us, the Grinch that stole Christmas. But that's how embedded this kind of psychological Santa Claus can become in government spending. And finally, I just told him, I said, because I had deciding vote in it, I said, until you can show me how these numbers are going to work, I said, I'm a hard no. I said, now you got to tell me how these numbers are going to work. But it becomes so pervasive. It was like a out of body experience looking at people that was normally intelligent people sitting there saying, yeah, let's just bankrupt this place and everyone's going to be happy. And I'm sitting there just like, I can't believe what I'm hearing here. But I can only imagine this replicating itself inside the halls of Congress over and over and over, and no one's saying, hey, you got to make the numbers work. But I'll leave it there. I know there's other people here.
Just remember yesterday I was talking about how things were when there were so many houses underwater and people's houses were being foreclosed. Why did that happen? Because people, they let their emotions, when they want a program in Washington or a project in West Virginia or to purchase a home, it's just human nature. I want that house. I fell in love with that house. How can I make this work on my salary? And the realtor says, oh, we can figure out how to make this work, because the realtor wants the commission. And then the mortgage company issues paper on a house that you're a poor risk for. And maybe you make it through, or maybe you don't. And it's just kind of like human nature, and we have to have the fortitude to stand up and draw a line and say, I love this house, but I just can't put the money together. I have to get something a little more modest. But if you have a project in Washington or in West Virginia that you really, 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 really want, you might ignore all of those realities. So I want to say thank you to Steve, and go to William, followed by
the way, can I just make one comment? I think there is a number, right? It's 60. It's about 60% of debt to GDP. I mean, there's a level where we could function. I mean, it's not. If we can get to 60% of debt to GDP ratio, but we're now functioning at over 100%. I think we're close to. I mean, I think we're close to 200% or something. That's the problem. I mean, what we'd have to do, but no politician will ever get elected by saying, hey, I'm Scott Jones. I'm going to run for Congress, and my project is going to be to get us to 60% to GDP to debt ratio. No one's going to do that, and that's fundamentally the problem. I mean, it's not an issue that will sell. It's the issue that's going to kill us. But people just don't know how to talk about it, and I don't know how to talk about it. I mean, it's the critical issue, but someone needs to tell a story about the debt to GDP ratio, and I don't know how to do it. But that's the critical issue.
Well, the thing is, everybody has, I forget who said it, maybe it was Steve that said it. These guys and gals, they all want to get reelected. Maybe it was you that said it. But anyways, they want to get reelected. So they have to bring home the bacon. And so I have a bill before my fellow members of Congress, and I'm trying to whip up support for the bill. And you come to me and say, I'll support your bill, Gary, but I need something for my district. I need something to come home to my people. And that's when these make-up projects get approved by Congress. And this is when people end up, building these bridges to nowhere and so forth, in order to pork barrel things to garner the votes that they need to pass the project that they really want to see cleared the Congress. So as long as we have that attitude, it's just going to kind of continue, I think. We'll now go to William, followed by Marcus. Thank you, Steve.
So I'm with Scott. And actually, Scott, if you want to run for Congress, you can win on a cost-cutting issue of take back our streets in Philadelphia, because banning the Philadelphia Parking Authority would get you elected. Very expensive. It's a tax on every citizen.
The executive director of the Philadelphia Park Authority makes more than the governor of the state.
It's like a mafia racket, and they're playing around with a lot of things that the room would not be interested in. But that'll get you elected to Congress in Philly. And I'm going to ride my bike over to the Mexican store and get some tacos and beans and rice. So I'm not worried about how much fuel I'm putting in my car, because I don't move my car. If I move my car, I can't find a space and I'll get tickets, and they're very expensive. But the cost is being driven up, I think, more locally in Philadelphia by the cost of diesel fuel, because everything gets trucked in here. So, some things come by rail, but the trucking, the cost for the truckers is going to drive up our prices on the fuel. And that's built into the cost of the products that are sold in the stores, cost of the groceries. That's one factor. There are multiple factors, like Scott was saying. The tariffs were supposed to bring industry back into the United States. Maybe it brings some, it loses other industry. Some industry was cross-border. Some industries are establishing themselves in Canada rather than the United States for a variety of reasons. And like the Griffin, the Griffin factories that are scheduled to go up in Canada, and that is also going to cut into sales of fourth generation fighters from the United States that Canada may have otherwise bought, or fourth generation. But there's a lot of things. The tariffs discourage business in some cases from coming to the United States, but they also, there's not a lot of new projects that have opened here, and they also drive up the cost of labor, because there's a lot of jobs that Americans really don't want to fill, and farmers not only are suffering from the tariffs, but they're suffering from the immigration, because a lot of our workers are, or what used to be our workers, who were living honestly and not committing crimes and paying taxes. A lot of them are being kicked out of the country. And when you drive up all the costs for living, it's going to discourage young people from having kids, or they'll put it off until later.
The organic birth rate is way down.
Right, and that is going to cause a demographic problem. So we'll actually need more laborers in the long run. And so the whole idea that we need to kick people out of our country because they're taking jobs, nah, not really. I mean, they're taking jobs that Americans often don't want to fill, and they are filling out a labor force that in many aspects is understaffed. And also, we're not immune. Like, it just, the United States is an exporter of fuel. The U.S. production is doing really well because of the shale and the different technologies that have come online for petrochemical and oil extraction. We've got more gas than we can actually use. There's actually flare-offs all the time out west. I've seen some discussion about that. So, we're energy independent, more or less. There's certain crude grades of oil that mix better in refineries and that are beneficial to have to make certain levels of product, but overall, the United States is energy independent. But the costs around the rest of the world
are going to have a downward pressure on global economies. And so if there's a global recession, a global depression, and we're manufacturing things, and we do manufacture some things, who's going to buy our stuff? Who's going to want to, pay the higher prices for the things that we have to sell? I mean, it's not. We are connected to the broader world, whether or not you want to deglobalize or not. We're not making everything here, and we do sell some things overseas. And if you depress demand because people don't have money for your products, you're going to sell less products. So overall, you just, it doesn't, we're not just isolated. We're not just Fortress America with two big ocean moats on either side and hostile neighbors to our north and south now. But, we have, we've lost a lot of trade. We've lost a lot of tourist trade for people that don't want to come to the United States from Canada because of the basically grotesque activities of the ICE agents and the hostility towards foreigners and the xenophobia of certain Americans and the tourist dollars are way down. That's an industry that's depressed. And, as far as the insurance, the insurance costs are off the charts. You want to ban FEMA? Terrific. How much is that going to drive up the cost for the almost uninsurable residences in South Florida? Or we're not into the fire season yet in the West. All these things, we have people that are working in government that actually provide value. They're not all just, do nothing, waste money jobs. They provide value. They provide value for the American people. And it's not just in the north and the coast, but, in the south. We're going to get hit with hurricanes. It's going to happen. Whether or not you want to believe it's related to global warming or not, it's still going to hit. You can believe it when the tide rises and the water crests over the walls. So FEMA provides a really essential service for states regardless of political affiliation. So that's going to hurt. That's going to drive up costs in one way or another. And then also, if you put people out of work, you're circulating less money in the economy. People are buying less stuff, and that has ramifications. So you have to actually. I'm a lawyer. I'm not an economist. I just read things. But a lot of these things are going to turn around and bite us in the ass, and that is a legal term. So it's just a lot of things are happening that are going to depress the economy. They're going to cut into real estate prices and might lower the quality of life for us and for our kids that want to start families. And that's going to be a problem.
So you mentioned the immigration issue and jobs, etc. One only needs to look at Japan. Japan was very, very tight on immigration because they want to maintain a homogenous society where everybody is Japanese. And, unlike the United States, people, and part of this may be genetic, but also they don't eat a lot of processed foods in Japan. And so they have a real problem there of longevity. People live much longer in Japan. That's a problem than people live in the United States because now you have the need for elder care. And with the birth rate being as low as it is in Japan, they are now going to other countries in Southeast Asia and encouraging people to come to Japan for long-term employment as caregivers. And of course, when people come in from other countries, there's a chance that there will be commingling and the genetic base of the country changes somewhat as a result of the study that we
People
discussed
love
earlier.
their neighbor.
Why
People love their neighbor.
Why do people fall in love?
And that could have been sponsored by the CIA or the FSB. That could be valuable information. Why do people fall in love?
Right. So we're going to see that here. We're going to see a complete shift from the current strategy on immigration, I believe, as our country continues to age and the birth rate is such that we don't have a lot of young people, especially young people who are predisposed to doing elder care. And my prediction is, you guys can write it down, especially those of you who are young enough to be able to track this for a number of years, beyond the years that I will be able to track it. You will see a huge influx of Filipinos into the United States who will come here to become caregivers. They will leave their children home with the grandma and the grandpa, and they will make money, and they will send a good portion of what they make back to the Philippines as a way of providing for their family and improving their life. And if they are lucky, they too will find someone to fall in love with. As the study, we could go back to that first study, the National Academy of Sciences study, why they fall in love. Thank you, William. We'll now go to Austin, who fell out and came back, followed by Marcus.
Thank you so much. I'm so. Oh, Marcus, are you in a hurry?
No, Austin followed by Marcus. Marcus left. Go ahead.
Okay,
Marcus.
cool. I'm so glad that William spoke because he was getting to some vital points. I think we're often chasing the wrong ball. We look into the 21st century. We have a lot of technology for alternative fuels. It's interesting, but Trump really seems to be working in the interest of the oil industry. And why are oil companies making so much money these days with oil prices so high all throughout the oil sector? It's kind of odd to me. But I think we're absolutely chasing the wrong ball. I mean, it's simple to look at the science of economic history and look what seems to be intuitive. You think, okay, we're going to reduce spending and that's going to help our economy. That's not the right question to be asking. And it's such like an intuitive tilt. Okay, I think of personal finance, I think of business finance, I think of corporate finance. Okay, we're going to reduce cost and increase revenue. But we're a nation, and we're the global reserve currency. What we need to be absolutely panicking about is how we're destroying the ill will of America. And even if Trump lives to 100, 120, he's not on this planet as long as a lot of us, and he's damaging our reputation in order to follow the winds of short-run pursuits. It's not a matter of are we spending or not, it's what are we spending on? It's been found that Keynes' science of economic expenditure, it's reality. It's not a matter of are you spending or not spending, are you spending on things that grow the GDP? It's absolutely proven that certain of government spending have an outsized effect in economic growth. When money circulates through the economy, it doesn't just disappear. When there's fiscal policy by the government, it doesn't just disappear, it circulates through the economy. So I think it's good to be cautious, folks that are in the media and folks that are on the blogosphere. It's so simple to make the emotional appeal to worrying about the deficit. And it is a concern, it's something that we have to be cognizant of. But what we really want is to be at the helm of the economy. We know that if we spend more and create more debt, then our currency weakens, then our exporters are benefited. I think the key is to have agility and the ability to navigate between what a given instance of economic ideal might be at a certain time and have the agility to change depending on what's needed. And what we're really losing out on is now we're in the era of AI and automation. We need to worry about the brain drain and the brain gain. Harvard, Caltech, Stanford, these used to always attract the best and the brightest. It was an obvious choice for so many people to end up here. And a lot of people don't want to be here. And we're losing the best and the brightest, and that's a real concern. I think we should maximize for longevity. We really have enough for everyone. There's just an artificial sense of scarcity. And I caution folks in the media and blogosphere, it might be easy to win an election on panic about the debt and the deficit and yada, yada, yada. But it's a science. Please chat with AI on logical mode for about 20 minutes about macroeconomics and economic multipliers before, say you want to have a blog post on it. Chat with the AI about macroeconomics and multipliers before going there, because we're in a sense of artificial scarcity. We have enough for everyone.
So your first comments about the where we spend our money and how it affects the GDP. According to the Pentagon, the war in Iran has cost American taxpayers at least $25 billion to as much as $35 billion. That's Pentagon estimates. The Pentagon reported a $11.3 billion cost for the first 6 days of the conflict. And the current burn rate is roughly $1 billion to $2 billion. So that's, I don't know, somebody can work out the math in their head. To me, that pushes the total costs much higher as the operation continues into its third month. So what's the cost of that to the GDP? I don't know, but I do know from my earlier readings about this that war typically acts as a major economic drain, although the president touts the fact that it is pumping up the U.S. military-industrial complex. So that might countermand a little bit of what I've read. But what I've read is that war in general reduces real GDP, especially in the conflict-affected nations. And long-term losses can last a long time, maybe a decade, maybe more.
Absolutely. We need to spend wisely. And if you look at the defense sector, and these days I'm all for a very strong defense sector. It's focused on defensive weapons and keeping us safe.
Right.
But a lot of it is not circulating through the economy. We just have a huge bull run on the defense sector.
Right. So I'm looking at the Kellogg Insight report, which says that global conflict in general, not this one specifically, costs an estimated $17 trillion annually. And that's 13% of the world GDP. So from an economic standpoint, aside from the terrible loss of life, obviously, and infrastructure that a war creates, like the song goes, you know me, I always go back to the lyrics of the songs. War, good God, y'all, what is it good for?
Absolutely nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
And if
but the asterisk in that song was, of course, The Undertaker. The Undertaker always did well.
And if we were spending that curing every cancer, think about how that would, just intuitively, think about how that would circulate through the economy, through the doctor's offices, through the medical companies, through the longevity. Let's focus on robotics, the build a utopia, senior care robotics, longevity in the health sectors, because those grow the economy massively. Look at Denmark's economy. Thank you, everyone.
Well, it's getting a little bit weird with the robotics. In South Korea, they've just ordained the first robotic monk. So I don't know if this is a joke that they were doing or whether they really think that robots can replace human monks in their religion or
Gary, you're
spiritual.
scaring me. You're terrifying me.
What's that, Scott?
You're terrifying me now.
Dude, it's your own damn fault. How many of your fellow ministers have turned to AI to write their sermons, lazy bastards? It happens all the time.
It's brutal. Yeah, it's brutal.
I mean, come on. What, we can't generate our own words? This is the beauty of this forum. Because people have to speak. And I know sometimes people are quoting AI. I get that. But generally speaking, people are speaking their truth to the room. They're not speaking ChatGPT's truth to the room. Monsef, followed by Daryl.
Thank you, Gary. Hey, what made me come up is the previous speaker on stage on some basic laws of economics and how they make a country work and all that. I wanted to acknowledge William and Austin's comments. They were spot on. I don't mean to pick on our friend in West Virginia, but when your idea for a successful country is that you can't get ahead unless we produce something, it's very vague. There is a concept in economics called the comparative advantage concept. You make what you're good at, because otherwise you'll be wasting your time in doing stuff that is, below your skill level. And by the time you get to produce it, even if it's produced locally, you're not going to be able to sell it because it's going to cost you too much. And that's the basics of international trade. We let other countries produce what they can produce at the best cost that they can do it. And we produce a lot in the United States. We have the comparative advantage of producing some of the best technologies in the world. We specialize in that, and that's our thing. It doesn't make sense to stop producing F-35s and go to build manufacturing, factories in West Virginia, Ohio, whatever, to make brooms and kitchen whatever, or T-shirts or clothing, because it has this idea that politicians talk about. We're gonna build factories. We're gonna get your unskilled workers to work, and they're not gonna make a living because no one is gonna be willing to buy a $40 broom, and no one will be willing to buy a $50 T-shirt. That's why when you buy your T-shirt, it doesn't say in the back "Made in Japan." It says it's made in Bangladesh or made in places where
Vietnam, Bangladesh and Vietnam.
Yeah, Bangladesh, Vietnam, but there is an idea that it makes sense for Levi's or whatever to go to places like that. It's a situation. You got a cost of living that is lower, that is cheaper. It makes sense to send your work there. They get to feed their families or whatever. Yes, sometimes it gets a little crazy with manufacturing like that. And a little, good valiance, I guess, is necessary to make sure that you don't get into, slavery and stuff like, child labor and stuff like that. But,
and the infamous fires in the Bangladesh garment factories, right?
Yeah, but the reality is someone can live on $100 or $150 salary, monthly salary in Vietnam, Bangladesh, China, and make T-shirts. But if you do that same job in the U.S., you'll have to pay him at least minimum wage. And the guy from West Virginia, I bet he's not willing to go to Walmart. It won't be a Walmart because Walmart is all China, and go and spend $15 for a broom. And that's why these empty, promises by our politicians, that, we're going to build factories. Well, factories of what? We do have factories. We got to build product that we can be good at and sell with, an added value to both the economy and to society. Anyway, enough of that. So I mean, it's little courses sometimes in your free community college would educate our voting populace, because the minute a president or whatever would go up there and say crap like that, at least people would be educated to say that. But you just say in the beginning of whatever, we're going to build factories, but it's not necessarily going to benefit society. I want to go back to gas prices and why they are expensive. I don't know if Gary, you saw the report by the Washington Post today, I think that it was a report that was that the CIA, has given to the administration about their, what they see in.
Right. Yeah, I actually posted something about that in the chat, which is linked above. And basically, what it says is that the CIA report to, and I don't know where the Washington Post got this. Their sources at the CIA or probably their sources at the White House. But the report said that if it becomes a stalemate over the Strait of Hormuz and the oil, ultimately Iran can handle that. The United States cannot. We will have to blink first. Is basically what.
It says that Iran has basically another 5 months before it could see some real damage to its economy. It also said that they still are sitting on a massive arsenal of missiles and whatever. This new deal.
And by the way, let me just interject.
Go ahead.
This is a CIA intelligence report to the President of the United States who says that there are no armaments left, that their military has been destroyed. Iranians' military has been destroyed. Well, where's he getting his information from? And this speaks to the whole point that he says what he feels is prudent to say at the moment, but not necessarily accurate. Although he is not unusual in this regard when it comes to elected officials. He is, in the sense that he has exploited this ability way beyond any other politician, at least in my lifetime, that I can recall.
Right. And the deal that they are trying to get now, how is this different than what Obama did? I mean, he trashed the Obama deal. We're getting.
But it was Obama, so it was wrong. It's his and it's right. This gets back to yesterday where I got yelled at for making a comparison that I promised I would never make again, about how when Biden finally proposed locking up the border, it was bad, but then after the president came in, I know it's not the exact same program, it was good. And so here we go with he's really got it in for Obama. He really dislikes Obama. Obama's past tense. Trump is current. He doesn't have to worry about what Obama did, or what Bill Clinton did, or what Jimmy Carter did. Those people are no longer in charge. And I don't know why he obsesses with this stuff to the degree that he does.
Yeah, there are multiple good articles today. Is it the 7th today? Yes, I'm reading one. I read one earlier today from the Financial Review. Literally, the title said, Trump's Iran deal looks a bit like Obama's. I mean, that's not just you, Gary. A lot of people are noticing this, including that, moratorium, I guess, on the nukes. It's only going to be about 10, 15 years max. But again, he said that they will never be able to produce a nuke. Now we're giving them time. But then after that, they are allowed to enrich to a level where they actually can use it for to arm and a nuclear head. Also, it's releasing a bunch of cash to Iran. Like we heard so much of that planes were full of cash leaving the banks of Maryland, Virginia, which is not true, by the way, because we paid them in Swiss francs, not US dollars. Anyone can check that. So banks were not getting emptied in the tri-state area to send billions of dollars to Iran.
Well, I saw pictures of pallets of cash.
Yeah, right, but it was not cash held at U.S. banks like the president said.
It probably was AI generated also.
Yeah, you saw it on the internet. But it was, the payment was made in U.S.
My
francs.
flowers are
So we're gonna now end up,
breaking through.
giving them the stuff that the president
Breaking
makes
through
fun
the
of
soil.
Obama for doing, for giving them their money back. I don't know where the money that we're gonna give them now, what's those frozen assets for? But it's the same thing. But it's the ultimate thing that we, the ultimate kind of scenario that, I mean, nothing says that we lost this. More than this. We went 180 degrees from, we went there, we won the first day. The regime change, it didn't happen. The torture of the Iranian people. Sorry, Alan, I know we were very hopeful in the beginning that it's going to be liberation to the Iranian people. You don't see anyone talk about the poor Iranians. And, if there is any help on the way, or if there is any things in these deals, written in the deals that the Iranian regime has to stop.
They are collateral damage.
Because
the reality is, when this war ends, if there's no regime change, and the chances of there being a regime change are very dim, I think is what you're saying, and I would agree.
That's right.
It's going to be retribution time for all those people who we encouraged. Our government encouraged them. Now, they may not have needed our encouragement, but our government encouraged them to take to the streets. We encourage them to do so. So let's just remember that if, in fact, and I hope I'm wrong, that mass executions occur and mass incarcerations occur because people simply went to the streets to protest the regime. We have some culpability in what happens to them as well, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be long. I think I just got a notification that I think we're just launching some new attacks in Iran. But the idea that gas prices are going down anytime soon, like you said this a few days ago, Gary, that when they go up like a rocket. When they fall like a feather. Summer driving season is coming. Don't expect gas to be, even if the war ends, even whatever. It's going to be a slow, going down. And I'm just amazed at, my God, how much they are willing to tolerate the pain in order to see, it's not even a pain for the stuff that the president say. Are you willing to tolerate a nuclear Iran? Well, we are going to end up with a nuclear Iran based on this deal, whether it's in 10 years or 15 years from now. It's just a matter of kicking the can down the road. It's not eliminating that threat. I'm going to let others speak, Gary. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Monsef. We'll now go to Daryl, followed by David.
Hey, Gary, can you hear me?
No.
Okay, well, I just got to ask. So I'm going to ask for some latitude here. I want to talk about, and I'm going to tie this to fuel. So before the UAE
taxes are not going
they had issued, their finance minister had issued a dire warning saying that, hey, if we don't start getting some of this oil out here, we may actually have to start selling oil in Chinese, in yuan, RMB. And so what we're doing right now is we're setting up currency swap lines for the UAE. And this is really only done in times of emergency, like in 2008 with the crisis, 2020 with COVID. Because what happens is if they start selling oil in Chinese RMB, they don't need to hold all those treasury notes, the American, they don't need to hold American dollars. So this is a precedent. Scott Bessent actually went in, he spoke before, I think, the Senate last week about this, and we're setting up currency swap lines to aid with liquidity. The problem is, though, that China has started prepaying Iran for oil. And so there was this thing that we're going to starve Iran and we're going to basically, break them economically and, we're going to starve them. But China started prepaying for oil. Iran's sitting on about $40 billion in its central bank. And so the idea possibly that another OPEC company, I don't know if you saw yesterday, Saudi Arabia is kicking everybody out. If another OPEC country, decides, hey, with this threat, now it could just be a threat, if they start threatening, hey, if we can't get through Hormuz, we're going to start making our own deals with China, and we're going to start making our deals in Chinese money. What will happen is you'll see that these countries don't need to hold American dollars because they're now trading oil and other things. And economically, what's going to happen is the American dollar is going to become less valuable because countries don't need to hold it. And what would happen with our debt? You'll see countries, hey, we don't need to hold these treasuries anymore because we're not, collecting. We're selling money outside of the petrodollar system. So we don't need these dollars. You'll see massive inflation. You will see massive inflation. And I think we're talking about gas. We're talking about gas prices. But this ties into so many other things, right? It ties into interest rates, right? Not just interest rates on mortgages, but just interest rates if you need to go and finance a car, if your credit card, all these other things that can be devastating for our economy. And the idea that we're possibly setting up a swap line, currency swap line for the UAE is something we really need to take seriously. The idea that China is pre-buying oil or paying for oil that they haven't even acquired yet from Iran just to hold up Iran, it kind of feels like there's an economic alliance that's building against this country. And it's not just about the price of gas. It's about how all of these things will impact us. You're going to see prices going up in the supermarkets, prices at restaurants. Prices are just going to start to go up. And someone said something earlier. What was it Monsef said? Monsef said something really, really brilliant, but I lost it. That's all I wanted to say. We need to start thinking about not just the price of, the cost at the pump, but what is happening globally, economically. And the UAE leaving OPEC is not a good sign for the future of the American dollar. That's all I want to say.
Thank you for that, Daryl. Ching, we've been trying to invite you up, and Francine also, but it's not working. I know you were up once. Maybe if you leave the room and come back and try again, we'll be able to bring you up. It's a technical issue. Monsef mentioned about he just got an alert about attacks. I've got that information for you. U.S. forces, this is according to the U.S. Central Command, targeted Iranian military facilities they say were responsible for launching a series of unprovoked missile, drone, and small boat attacks against American warships transiting the Strait of Hormuz. Interesting, given the fact that they denied that our ships were under attack. Just want to point that out.
I remember now, Gary. I remember what you had said earlier about the CIA and that memo that dropped earlier. Chuck Schumer said something a couple of months back. He said, "Don't mess with the intelligence agencies because they can screw you 6 ways to Sunday. And no matter how powerful you think you are, leave the intelligence agencies alone." And I think this is the intelligence agencies flexing their muscle just a little.
Well, we don't know whether that leak came from the White House or the intelligence agencies. Both are possible. Let me go back to what CENTCOM said. I'm going to quote from their press release. U.S. forces intercepted unprovoked Iranian attacks and responded with self-defense strikes as U.S. Navy-guided missile destroyers transited the Strait of Hormuz to the Gulf of Oman on May the 7th. That's today. CENTCOM says that the Iranian facilities targeted include, quote, missile and drone launch sites, command and control locations, and intelligence surveillance and reconnaissance nodes. So supposedly the strikes were carried out at multiple locations. So what this means, is this like a one-off, or are we back at it? I don't know. If we're back at it, does that mean that the ceasefire has ended? Does that mean that the clock starts ticking again, even though it probably always was, but the president claimed that the clock stopped ticking on the War Powers Act? Does that mean that he has to go now before Congress for authorization? Will he go before Congress for authorization? I don't know the answer to any of these questions, to be honest with you. Thank you for that, Daryl. David, followed by Ching.
Hey, Gary. Fantastic discussion, by the way. Yeah, I think that that we're headed for a cliff of sorts with this oil. I think that our Arab allies know that the Iranians can control the game here. Recall they're going back and forth with regard to letting us use their airspace. I'm referring to Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. They're obviously very concerned about the protections that we need to provide for them. The UAE, as was mentioned, is going alone on the OPEC game now. But Iran has a history of handling these issues. They have a history of, I heard an argument here that they can just start burning their oil fields and start shutting them down and waiting us out. There's all kinds of ways that they can play this. So the fact that we're trying to blockade them is great, but if they can wait it out and the rest of the world starts to suffer, I'm hearing it argued right now, Gary, that even though we have a lot of oil, we can't transport fuel when we fly somewhere else. So airline companies are at the mercy of wherever it is they're flying to make sure they can refuel. So who's going to want to get on a plane and go to a middle economy country like Vietnam or Thailand, where they could potentially get out of fuel and you're sandbagged in a country waiting this out? So, the poorer nations of the world, obviously, we don't give a damn about because, they can just suffer and white knuckle it and deal with it in their own way. But this is going to trickle to our first world allies in Japan and Vietnam. And, these are going to have unknown consequences on the stock market, on the international markets, on our bond market. It's already trending higher. This is going to cause costs, pain points with regard to housing, automobiles that were mentioned. All the borrowing that goes on in this great country is tied to these indexes. And at the lower rates that we need them to be at to keep inflation down, when we're at risk of defaulting, when we're at risk of rising military costs to defend this. So, everything that Trump sort of messaged and attempted to sell going into the election has completely not materialized, in my opinion. And I hope the American people are happy that he's in the White House now and not Kamala Harris, who potentially would not have done any of this. So here we are. We're playing the game now. Israel obviously is very sensitive to this these talking points. This one-page memo that's come out, basically spelling out what's on the table here. And they're obviously a kink and a thorn in the side of making sure that we don't go back to what it is we originally had with Obama 10 years ago, Gary. So, at the end of the day, the hemorrhaging's got to stop at some point. Americans, we're going into the summertime, Gary. Americans are having to travel more domestically. A lot of Americans drive SUVs. They're pro-American. They buy the big trucks. And all this is eating into their gas costs and their ability to spend time or extra money on their families. So those are going to be some serious pain points this summer if gas prices continue to surge.
which I think they are. Everything's pointing that way. So yeah, I think Trump's needs to get his head wrapped around this. The War Powers Act, as you mentioned, is sunsetting, and I think it's time that our intelligence apparatuses, in tandem with our elected officials outside of the presidency, get together and solve this mess before it's too late. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And Ching, you get the last.
Are you calling me?
If your name is Ching, I certainly am.
Hi. Hi, Gary. Hi, Alan. Hi, Marsh. Hi, Scott. Let's see. I'm just referring to early. Is it Alan? I forgot who was it. Oh, Steve. We're talking about China, America, and America is always has been service-based economy, and I read some articles says right now it's actually good that we are not based in manufacture, because when you rely on when you have manufacture based economy, and then the oil assumption is even higher, and we're probably going to be in shitholes. And in terms of China economy right now, I was just looking for, even 4 weeks ago, the American dollar trading is actually not as good as in what do you call it? Actually, no, never mind. The American dollar right now today is 6.8, and 4 weeks ago is 7.29. That means yeah. And what else? We're talking about China. Okay, oil. When I was in China just 6 months ago, and we talk about this, economy, and then lately talk to more people. When we have a phone conversation, and my friend say you don't have to worry about oil shortage. China has a huge reserve, about 5-6 years of they dig these holes in the ground, and they have plenty of supply of oil. So to them, it's not critical that the Middle Eastern and other countries that is in shortage of oil. And as gasoline price goes up, this is a much more close to everyday life issue, except people don't use cars, and then they don't feel the pain. Hearing somebody else's pain is different. When you go on to pump those gasoline, I would take pictures of the gasoline. I took a picture about 3 weeks ago, then I took a picture just about last week, and I use Plus version, and my oil tank is not that huge, but it increased. Like it used to be like $40. I can take care of the whole tank. Now it's more than $60. So it is pretty ouch. So I don't use car every day. It's more like a entertainment equipment for me. But now I have to reduce my entertainment, and driving around for no purpose. So that is one thing. And then airline has increased greatly the price. This morning at 3 o'clock, Gary, I got a text message. Of course, I saw it only later at 8 a.m. And somebody bought a Asiana ticket using my credit card, and somehow, my credit card has compromised. It was quite a lot of money, close to $1,800. So I would assuming it's a international flight, probably round trip. So people are desperate and people are breaking the laws, So of course I canceled my credit card, but it's pain in the butt, when you cancel a credit card, right? Sometimes, your utility is going to the credit card and deduct automatically. Now you have to call all the companies, to um, to tell them the new card. So it's kind of a tedious and senseless work. Yeah. So is your title is are we at the fuel cost tipping point? And I hear Gary said you hope so. I deeply doubt it is at the tipping point. It's gonna go high, maybe go low a little bit. Yeah. So I think it's not tipping point. Okay, I'm done talking.
Thank you, Ching. Appreciate that. Ching, Monsef mentioned that at $100, I don't know whether he said a week or a month, in China, people can live pretty well. Is economy similar to that? I'm in Bangladesh, that it doesn't take much in U.S. dollars